Good afternoon. It's good to be with you again. I welcome you with all my heart. I see we're dwindling. We're probably getting down to the ones who can really hear the message, and that's good. The consciousness gets more focused as the class goes on. There are a number of questions here today, or more questions than before, and I think once again I'll leave them until after the break, because I think many of them will get answered in the process of the first half of this class. We've been talking up till now at essentially the highest level about moving from Maya into mysticism, and today we're going to talk about supply, which, as Margaret says, is a favorite infinite way topic. Everybody's interested in supply. I suspect that we will talk about it from the highest level that we can talk about it at, but in reality, supply is a more concrete example, or a more concrete topic on which we can talk about the things that we've been talking about in the previous 2 weeks. There's a little more of what we would call practicality to it, as Robert would say, so to speak. It's a little more practical, so to speak. Supply is very simple to talk about. It's just very difficult to practice because it takes a leap of faith to turn your whole life around and start operating from the opposite viewpoint of human consciousness that is continually has been continually taught to us, and which is continually reinforced on a daily basis. Starting at the original principle that all there is God, which is the equivalent statement to all there is consciousness. Now, let's just pause there for a second. Sort of the underlying axiom of all of this is that there is a God which is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and loving. And that is a premise that we will just accept as a premise, because there's no possible way to prove it or not prove it except in your own experience. When you've experienced that, then it's your experience. Until then, it's a theory. But if God is omnipresent, then God is everywhere, and there is no place for anything else to be. God is the very nature, the very fabric of everything. God is consciousness. God is spirit. Spirit and consciousness are essentially equivalent words, neither of which really has any meaning to us, because there's no way that we can talk about what God really is, but we can try to get a sense of it. God is consciousness, God is spirit, and God is all there is in the universe. God pervades the entire universe, so the entire universe is consciousness, is spirit. God's creation is a creation created out of God because God is all there is, and so anything that God could create must come out of God, and therefore anything that God created is spirit or consciousness. There's a lot of talk in the Bible about the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. For word, think of concept, or think of idea, or think of that thought that interrupted the primordial silence, and in that thought resulted in creation. God's awareness of itself as consciousness rather than just being in the silence. The way it is to me is there is the silence, the primordial silence, the womb of creation, that silence which we can all experience through meditation. And within that silence, which is consciousness at rest, or consciousness which is not conscious of anything, if that is possible, comes self-consciousness at the God level. It comes ideas, comes thought, comes expression, and the universe happens. And the universe is ideas in God's consciousness, and so the universe is consciousness, and God is infinite intelligence and infinite wisdom, and there's no way we can possibly get a grasp on the incredible complexity of this creation, of the interrelatedness. There are a lot of little pictures that people have come up with which are sort of images of it. Indra's Jewels is one I like, where you can imagine 1,000 faceted diamonds, and each diamond has one facet facing one of the other diamonds. I guess there must be 1,001 of them if they have 1,000 facets. And so every diamond has a facet which is facing another diamond, and each diamond is reflected in every other diamond. And if you were then to introduce a little bit in color in one diamond, a ray of light in one diamond, it would immediately reflect into or go out into the 1,000 diamonds, and they would immediately transmit it across each other to the 1,000 diamonds, and they would immediately transmit it to all 1,000, each time it being affected by the other one, and this transmission would go on, so that if you make the slightest little change anywhere, all the diamonds change, and all the rays between every diamond changes, and such like. And this is such a trite picture compared to the reality, but the reality is of God, and God is the fabric of reality, and God is the source of reality, and reality is consciousness. It is spirit. Now, in creation of the idea of human, let's say, that human is a spiritual being. That is a spiritual idea in God which has been multiplied to the billions of us that we see. But the idea of human is an idea in consciousness. And to my knowledge, it is the highest expression, the expression which reflects all of the nature of God. It says again in the Bible that man was created in God's image. Well, God is spiritual, so man being created in God's image, man is spiritual, is spirit. And as God is creative, so is man creative. We too, being consciousness, can have ideas. And as God had ideas and manifested this spiritual world, so we too can have ideas and manifest what we call the material world, but which is just ideas in consciousness, in human consciousness now. It's all just ideas and concepts. What we are manifesting in what we as humans are creating, and that word is sort of in quotes, but what we are creating is the outpicturing of our human belief system, and it will reflect our beliefs. Or, if we're high enough and clear enough, we can get out of the way, we can recognize our oneness with God, and we can let God's picture be the source into this creativity of us, which manifests as what we call the material world. So the source can be, if we're clear enough, an outpicturing still a concept of God's creation, but closer to God's truth, or the picture that we create can be based on our own human limited concepts, our own intellect, our own thoughts, the thoughts we pick up from the totality of human consciousness and human subconsciousness, and that outpictures. And we see what we are believing. We see what we are conscious of. Now, mind is the word we use for that faculty we have in which our creation is outpictured. And that creation, as I say, that is outpictured is what we call matter. Now, God's creation is perfect and harmonious. I mean, the words, again, are just, I'll use them because they give an indication, but remember, all of these words are just words, and you have to get the fragrance. I'm going to use that word fragrance. You have to get the consciousness of it. You have to get the fragrance of it. Rashneesh used to talk about, and I'm sure most of you have heard this, but I'll say it again just to get it on the tape, if nothing else. He used to talk about presenting someone with a rose, and the person was trying to understand what a rose was, and would take the rose and start investigating it and pull the petals off and pull the stamen out and do all this work and put petals under microscopes and do all this work, and eventually he would wind up with pieces of rose all over the table and still no idea of what a rose was. He would maybe have details about cells and petals and how roses work, how they appear to work, but he would have taken this rose and turned it into nothing, and he would give up and walk away. And that evening he's walking down the path, and all of a sudden he smells a fragrance. And he looks over his shoulder looking for a rose, because all the time he was working on dissecting that rose and taking it apart, he was inhaling the fragrance and learning what a rose was. A rose is that fragrance. So we use words to try to convey, but the words are wrong. Don't study the words. Try to get the fragrance. Try to get the consciousness. Try to get the sense behind them. God's reality is harmonious, completely harmonious. There is no disharmony in God's creation. God's creation is eternal and permanent, and there are no different parts of God's creation which are in conflict with each other and are trying to destroy each other or limit each other. It's in perfect harmony. And God's creation, well, we as the idea of human being are our spiritual perfection. Other words that are used are the Sanskrit terms Sat Chit Ananda, being, truth, and bliss. And God's creation is unchanging and eternal, and well, that maybe is enough to say there. Everything which we see which is changing is not a true picture of God's creation. That's our concept of it, and what's changing is our concept of the unchanging creation, which is God's creation. Now, if we think about this for a few minutes, we realize that all of the material world is our concept of the spiritual reality. It is an outpicturing of the spiritual reality based on our current state of awareness. And the important thing to realize from the viewpoint of supply is that it is an effect. It is an outpicturing. It is my concept of something. The reality is God's spiritual reality, and there's no possible source of harm or disharmony or disruption or lack or sickness or any of those things in the spiritual reality. My outpicturing may in fact contain all these images, but that's an effect. It is an outpicturing of my concept of God's creation, or my acceptance of human beliefs, which may or may not have any relationship to God's creation at all. The picture is an effect. There is no cause out there. There is no cause in the material world. The material world is just a picture in my mind. It's like watching a movie and thinking that something in the movie can affect you, can cause you to do something. Now, you may react to the movie and do something, but the movie is not a cause. The movie is the effect of the light going through the film showing on the screen, and it's passive. It's a reflection, or like looking at a picture of yourself in a mirror. The mirror is an effect, and that's even closer to what we're experiencing in what I'm talking about. The mirror is an effect, and if the mirror were to draw a gun and point it at you and shoot, that bullet would not reach you. It would be a reflection of the fact that you're drawing a gun and shooting your picture in the mirror, and the mirror might well break, but it can't touch you. The image in the mirror is an effect. There's no source there, there's no cause, nothing from there. Now let's talk about the human sense of supply. The human sense of supply is, let's see what I can get from out there. I will get income from my boss. I will get away on a vacation. I will get back from a vacation. I will get to do this. I will get to do that. Human consciousness is based totally on the idea of get. What can I get from you? What can I get out of this? What will I get if I do that? Get is the operative word in human consciousness. And yet, it's all effect out there. There are no causes out there. How can you get anything from an effect, from something which is not causative? How can something which is not causative cause anything? It's like trying to get something from the reflections in the mirror. You go up there to the mirror and reach for it, and you've got glass. You have not got something from the mirror. But human consciousness is totally immersed in the idea of getting, and it's really nicely accelerating. I mean, I really suspect that human consciousness is about to make a breakthrough here, because getting is accelerating, and the intensity of getting is growing and growing, and people are trying to get prettier, and they're trying to get richer, and they're trying to get better cars, and they're trying to get higher, and they're trying to get, more drugs, and they're trying, movies are getting wilder because people aren't getting the rush off the movies they used to get. They have to get more violent so that you can get the rush, and you have to get better drugs so that you can get higher. And I mean, get is the nature of the world, and it's intensifying, which it must, because also is the silence. We are also in the silence more. But this is the problem with supply. You're trying to get something from a source which has nothing to give. You're trying to get something from your output. It's like taking $10 out of your pocket and putting it on the table and trying to get $5 from it. It was your $10 had you left it in your pocket. You can't get anything from out there. On the other hand, in our spiritual reality, we are one with God. One, not separate from. There is not God and me. There is not God and you. There is God expressed as me and expressed as you. God is infinite intelligence, infinite abundance, infinite everything. Infinite harmony, infinite love, infinite joy, infinite... Fill out the list forever. And that is you. That is your reality. That reality which you can experience by getting quiet. So what I will call the one and only principle of supply is you already have it all. Why don't you express it? If you want more out there, realize it. Don't go out there and try to get it. Realize more out there. Go inside to your center. Know your oneness with God. And in your conscious awareness of this fact, you will express it in the 3D world. The nature of mind is it expresses whatever you believe. If you believe you have lack, your reality is lack. If you believe there's not enough, your reality is there isn't enough. If you believe you are one with an infinite source and are by nature an expressive creative being, then your reality must express infinite abundance. The mind has no choice. The mind is a tool. The mind must express what's in your consciousness. And if you can get away from the human consciousness, if you can quiet your thoughts, quiet the intellect, quiet your conditioning, if you can get that clarity in which you are one with God and know your oneness with God, then you express. Joel talks a lot about the way the infinite way unfolded. Joel never sought a student. Joel never sought a dollar. Joel never took money for, never collected dues from people, from Infinite Way students, never sent out a monthly solicitation letter. Every time, Joel's message was God expressing itself to human consciousness through Joel. And Joel knew that. And what happened was that in order for the message to be expressed, there needed to be a publisher to publish the books. and they volunteered. They wrote him and asked if they could publish his books. He never sent a manuscript anywhere. He published the first 2,000 copies of The Infinite Way himself out of his own pocket. And then somebody saw one and sent a copy to England, and somebody over there saw it and published an article in a newspaper, and a publisher over there got excited about that and wrote him and wanted to publish it. And so, they published thousands of copies of The Infinite Way in England, and it developed that way. And if Joel, then Joel would get a call to teach, and the money would show up. And everything in the development of The Infinite Way showed up exactly when it should. There were always airplane tickets, there were always hotel rooms, there was always enough money to go here, there was always food, there were always students. Joel just got up in the morning and went into meditation and got his orders for the day and expected it to be fulfilled. And that's the way it happened, because he was absolutely certain that that's what would happen. Margaret has a little book on supply called Expect It. And that's what she's saying. If you expect it, it must outpicture. Because if you expect it, then that's what's in your consciousness, and it must outpicture. Supply is expression. That is the nature of the beings which we are. We are creative, expressive beings. And supply is expression. Supply is outflow. You measure supply. Supply is really infinite, so we're not really talking about demonstrating supply. You can't demonstrate supply because you already have an infinite amount of supply, but you can, what we talk about in this 3D world is the extent to which we express the infinite supply, which is our nature. And so the focus to get this lesson is to concentrate on outflow, not income. And there's a couple of examples, again, that I will take from Jesus' ministry. Jesus is a master, and I like to use Jesus because I'm familiar with a lot of the words he said that are recorded in the New Testament, the red part. And, he says things so incredibly well, so very clearly, if you are in a place where you can hear them. When I talk about Jesus, I'm talking about the Master, Jesus, the Christ. And I mean that exactly as I would say the Master Gautama, the Buddha. Christhood and Buddha mind are different expressions for the same thing. The difference is the audience. In any event, Jesus showed us about supply when he fed the multitudes. He had a bunch of people, 5,000 people that were there to hear him talk, and none of them had eaten. And he said to the disciples, "What do we have?" And the disciples said, I don't know, I'm not a biblical scholar, so I don't know the numbers, but we have, 3 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And Jesus said, "Oh, good, take, divide, distribute." And they proceeded to do so. And they passed out the bread and the fish to the 5,000 people, and at the end, the fact is recorded that there were 12 baskets full of crumbs and stuff left over. This is, supply in the clearest form. And there's another example in the Old Testament of a widow who wanted to make some offering, and she was extremely, extremely poor. And she was asked, "Well, what do you have?" And she says, "Well, I have this little bit of oil in this lamp." And whoever it was that was talking to her said, "Well, pour." And she started pouring, and the oil just poured and poured and poured and poured and poured endlessly. This is the principle. And the way we start experience supply is exactly what's presented in those two stories. The question is, what do I have? What do I have in the house now? And whatever that is, you begin pouring. And as you pour, you find more and more in the house and more that you can pour. And then there's more and more in the house and more than you can pour. And this is the way that we can actually start, because it is so difficult, given our human conditioning, to take the chance when we feel like we're poverty-stricken to, give out our last $10. You're not asked to give out your last $10. What you're asked to do is find that which you have, and whenever you have an opportunity to pour, to show forth something, do so. It can be love or time or caring or going through your wardrobe, finding the old clothes, or money or tithing or whatever. Start where you can. If you're going to tithe, you could start at 2% or 1%. You don't need to start at 10%. Get the flow going. I believe I read once in a Joel book, and I have never seen it again, and I have never found anybody else who has seen it, which has me a little bit concerned. That's why I stress the word believe so much. But I believe I saw somewhere that Joel said concerning supply, if you have nothing, steal $10 and give it away. Now, if anybody finds that, I hope you'll let me know, and if not... And that's the principle. Prime the pump. In fact, I'm sure he used that. It's like priming the pump. Prime the pump. Get it started. Back in Tennessee, we had a well in our backyard with a pump on it. And when the power went out, the pump went out, and there was no water. And when you start it up, the pump is sucking on air. And so what you do is you pour water into it until the pipe gets full, and then it starts coming out, and now it's connected again to the river that's under the lot, and now it pumps water, endlessly. Prime the pump. Get it started. Any way you can, get it started. The other concept that's used so often is the vine or the tree, and we're branches, and the source is the tree. And you can pull endlessly from the tree, because the tree is connected to the roots, is connected to the ground, is connected to the world, is connected to the rain and the sun and all of that. The source for the tree is infinite in the case of this story. And here you are, a branch, and you can either draw from the tree and express it as blossoms and fruit, or you can try to do it yourself. And if you try to do it yourself, then you are limited to that amount of sap and nutrients and stuff that is in the branch. And when that is burnt, you will wither and die. So that's another common analogy to this. It's a reversal of our way of thinking. And I understand that it must be tested because of our nature. But test it. Try it. The whole human concept is wrong. It's exactly backwards, just like all this 3D stuff is exactly backwards. Be quiet for a minute and see if supply is done. It may be done. I'm reminded to put in a couple more quotations or things from Jesus. After the great speech by Jesus, which is, take no thought for tomorrow what you shall eat or what you shall drink or wherewithal you should be clothed. And he goes on to say, and well, no, that's in Isaiah. Which one is him? Yeah. Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. And what he's talking about is exactly what we're talking about. My kingdom is the spiritual world, this world being the material world. My kingdom is not of this world. He says, I have meat to eat, not of, and he's talking about supply and his ability to express supply. It also says, this is Isaiah, my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my things are not your things, and your thoughts are not my thoughts. And this is once again exactly my things and my thoughts are creation, are reality, and your things, your thoughts are the material world. And the other one is keep your thoughts on God, and the rest of these things will be added unto you. Let me look. I wrote that down somewhere. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. That was the quotation that Jesus said after take no thought about what you shall eat and drink and wear and things like that. He said, seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and the rest of these things will be added unto you. And he's saying exactly what we've been saying these three classes. Work on your connection with God. Work on your oneness with God. Work on the realization of your oneness with God. Keep your thoughts on God, and the rest will be added unto you. You will, given the experience of your oneness with God, express everything you need. I love Robert, who became enlightened at the age of 14 and lived until he was 67 or 68, and traveled all over the world and taught in countries everywhere, and went wherever he wanted to and wandered, and he never had a Social Security number. He never had a job. Nobody ever asked him for his Social Security number. He never filed a tax form. He's my hero. I mean, he was not in the government records. He didn't exist as far as the U.S. government was concerned. He was taken care of. I mean, the universe had to take care of him. He had to be able to eat every day. He had to, and he was not a rich man, but there was someone to drive him to satsang, and people would give him enough money that he could eat, and he always ate, and he was always full of joy and love. This was a demonstration of supply. The man never worked, but he always gave. From the time he was 14 on, he spent 50 some odd years giving of what he had, which of course was the infinity of God and this awesome consciousness and understanding that he had. And that's supply. This class is your demonstration of supply. This class is your expressing your desire to gain spiritual knowledge or wisdom or understanding. This is a demonstration of supply on your part. Well, let's take a break for a few minutes and we'll come back and look at the questions. All right, let's start into these questions and see where they lead us. There's a couple of questions here that are about healing, and I will either answer those privately after the class or we'll get to them next week if they haven't been answered. Next week will be our last class, and it will be devoted to healing. The first question. What does this mean, consciousness is all there is? I think that's been answered pretty thoroughly, so it means to be taken literally. Consciousness is all there is, materiality isn't. Materiality is a picture in consciousness, an idea in consciousness. The substance of materiality is consciousness, is God. God is the substance of all form, is Joel's book. The second question. If your consciousness changes, the picture must change. Can you say more about this? It's a very... There's not a lot you can say about it. That is the nature of mind. Mind is... We keep talking about mind like it's a reality or something, but it's consciousness. It's an aspect of consciousness. You know, when you think a thought, when you have a concept, there's a picture of it. There's an outpicturing of it. It's in your mind. When you dream at night, you have something in your consciousness that needs to be expressed, and in your mind, your personal mind, there is a picture of it, which is your dream. It has no reality in the real world. It doesn't really take up space. There really isn't that town or those people or that anything. It's a picture in mind. If the question essentially boils down to is, if you change your mind, why does mind change? If you change your consciousness, your concepts, mind is just the outpicturing of your concepts. And so if you change your concepts, you change the picture. It's exactly like a mirror. If you comb your hair, the picture in the mirror changes. It cleans up. What I think I am has more reality than the concepts in my mind. Can you say more about this? I'm not sure I know what that says. I'll play with it. What I think I am has no reality at all. The word think is the big clue. If I'm thinking, that is not what I am, and it has no reality at all. What I am is it's like for all of us, peace be still and know that I am God. I, the capital I, the I of all of us, the one I. And that I is the reality, and it is the only reality. That I, and everything I say in the next few minutes, whenever I say I am talking about the I, the capital self, capital S self. The I that I am God, and I am reality, and I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, I am the light. That I is reality. Everything else is images in mind, concepts in mind. All there is consciousness. Last week you spoke of living by spiritual principles, that it helps us get closer to the two commandments. However, remember, it's all effect. Can you say more about this? This is the great dilemma in this work, and the most interesting questions are always brought about, and all the paradoxes are brought about by the shift between the relative concepts and absolute concepts. If you think you're in this world, then your practice is in this world. And that practice is one which will, that practice can be one which will lead you closer to, if you practice the spiritual principles in this 3D world, that picture will then reflect your growing closer to the experience of God, which is getting closer to the two commandments, if you will, realizing that all there is God is certainly loving that God with all your heart and soul and mind, and your neighbor is yourself, because it's all God. It is true that in the 3D world it is effect. That doesn't make the principles untrue. It does, at an absolute level, make the practice unnecessary or of no avail, since the one you are is the one who is conscious of the one who is doing these practices, who is practicing these principles. And your reality is that you are the consciousness in which this creature that we're talking, this being that you think you are, is practicing these principles. And if you're comfortable with being that, then don't bother to practice the principles, because it makes no difference what happens if you are in fact the witness observing all this. It makes no difference what happens. But if you are identifying with the one who is experiencing all this, then practicing the principles will bring you closer to your understanding. From the relative viewpoint, if you practice the principles, your consciousness will get higher, you will become more transparent, you will become more aware of your oneness with God, you will have more of God's true concepts expressed in your outpicturing than if you don't practice the principles. But at some level, remember that this is not this great serious thing. All the Zen masters that have become enlightened usually meet it with a great roar of laughter. When you discover that what you've been seeking is what you've been seeking with, it's really pretty funny. I guess that covers that question. The fifth question. You talked last week about spiritual secrecy, what Joel calls praying in secret. Please discuss further how this concept can help me during day-to-day trials to stay focused on a direct experience of God. Those are two different things. The spiritual secrecy I was talking about last week is that when you have revelations or clicks or concepts or things like that, understandings, that it is important to keep them silent and secret within yourself so that they can develop without being thrown out amongst the people who will destroy them. What Joel calls praying in secret is another aspect of secrecy, but is on a different track. Jesus warns us that when you pray. Don't pray in the, I won't quote the Bible correctly again exactly, but the saying is don't pray on the corners or pray in the synagogue, but go into your closet and close the door and there pray quietly. And what God sees in silence, in secrecy, will be displayed for the world. And the same thing about alms. He says when you give alms, don't have somebody go before you with a trumpet and attract the crowd so that they can watch you giving alms, but again, do it secretly and silently. And what you do in secret, he said, in fact, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And what you do in secret, God will reward openly. That's his term. What you do in secret, God will reward openly. This is the lesson on praying in secret, and this is the nature of prayer. The prayer is, do you see that praying in synagogues or on the corner or giving alms openly and stuff is an ego thing. And it's a 3D thing, it's a material world thing, and it's therefore counterproductive to what we're trying to do, which is to get rid of the ego. Praying in secret in your closet, dropping your ego, becoming silent, allows you to become one with God. And it is this type of praying, this type of silent praying without words and thoughts, that is the fruitful prayer, and that is the elevation in consciousness, and that will be rewarded openly in your experience. Once again, as your consciousness changes, so must your experience. So both things are well, there's really three things. Learn to work on the idea that effective prayer is prayer with no words and no thoughts. Prayer is never in solicitation. God is not withholding. God's deal is done. Prayer is the first stages of prayer are trying to elevate yourself, but real prayer is communion, is when you are in conscious union with God with no words and no thoughts and no ego. So that's the reason for that. But the thing about secrecy is, the old cast not your pearls before swine, lest they be trod upon. It's in that sense that if you have a new concept that you think you understand and you immediately go tell people, then you are opening yourself, then you're listening to their response, and essentially you're listening to hear the 5 billion tell you nonsense. And my things are not your things, and your thoughts are not my thoughts. You don't want to hear human thoughts about your spiritual concepts and your spiritual revelations and your spiritual unfoldments. You want to take them inside and let them grow. And at some point, you will discover that you are teaching them to someone who has come to you in silence and humility and said, hey, I want what you have. At that point, you will talk. I had the clearest example of that. I used to be real quiet by nature, and when I came back from India, I didn't say anything for like 4 or 5 years. And then somebody came to me, and we went and had lunch, and I was just amazed. I just babbled for an hour, and like just this and this and this and this and this and this, and telling, and it blew him away completely. But there was the case that he was drawing it from me and needed to hear it, and it was not in my control, and it was not that I thought I would do that or anything. And that person came to me to get that information. It was just part of of God's plan, and it was drawn from me then, and then it was appropriate to share it. But then again, I didn't share it again for another 3 years. And then there was a period in which I was driving with somebody down to Laguna Beach to a meditation, and we would talk, and I was often surprised at what I was telling her. And now I discover very often, I walk with people often, and I have no agenda. I don't know what I'm going to say, and sometimes I'm surprised at what I say, and it's drawn out of me by whoever I'm with, and my reaction is, oh, I didn't know that person was ready to hear that, or sometimes I'm surprised at what I say, and sometimes I can't say things, and that's when I'm in consciousness, and people are drawing from me what they're ready to hear. At that point, it's appropriate to say whatever. If it's drawn from you, it's drawn from you. The next question. To explore what God is not helps to be free of Maya, the illusion. In the absence of the illusion, in the smallest degree at least, I begin to have direct experience of truth, God. Please say more about the nature of this experience. It's impossible to say anything about it. This is the experience that the word ineffable was coined for. Ineffable meaning inexpressible, that you can't talk about it. There is a presence. There's no doubt about it. I'll tell you a story, a Barbara Mull story. Barbara had a realization, and she was having a meal with Joel, and she had got it that there is no God, where God means any concept that you have of God, any God that's there, not here, that's separate from you, that can do something or withhold or give or yada yada yada. She finally got it. She says, there is no God. And Joel smiles. He's so glad that she got it. And he sort of twinkles at her and he says, but there is something. And that's the experience. And there is something. And there is no question when I'm experiencing it. I'm experiencing it right now. Right now, there is something. And that's... Even something is the wrong word. This is how ineffable it is. Notice that something is the wrong word because it's nothing. It's just consciousness, except nothing is the wrong word because nothing implies that there's something it's not. And that's not true either. Advaita Vedanta, Advaita means non-dual, because they discovered that they couldn't say one because one implies many, so they finally sort of settled on a compromise and they just said not two. It's inexpressible. But it's here right now. Close your eyes, get quiet, go way inside to the center of you and see if you feel a tingling or a little chill on the back of your neck or anything at all. The problem is, of course, that we will experience this presence within our five senses because that's how we experience. But let's all get quiet and feel the descent, or the rising, or the tingling, or the stillness, or the allness, or the nothingness. peace, be still, and know that I am God, and I am with you, and I am you. I am the only reality, the only truth, the only existence. Moses' revelation was, I am that I am. And that was the small self dissolving, realizing I am the I am, the capital I am. All of existence, I am that I am. Let your sense of self expand. Let the limits of yourself dissolve. Let them just dissolve into nothingness, so there is no outer limit to you. There is no edge to your consciousness. All of creation is within your consciousness. And beyond and engulfing and within and underlying all of this is the silence. A nothingness, even less than nothing. You can recognize nothing against it. I am nobody, no thing. Pure, unadulterated nothingness, pure spirit, pure consciousness. Robert used to refer to this as cooking us. The teaching is really best done in the silence. Just being together. When two or three are gathered together, the presence is here. And it's really here now. Well, I think that's it for this class. We'll have one more class next week on healing. The purpose for studying healing and supply is not to improve your 3D world and your 3D experience, but to lift your consciousness. These are the demonstrations that we can make that proves the truth of what is otherwise a theory. But if you can demonstrate it or see other people demonstrating it, then you become more and more able to move there yourself and come higher and higher and into the consciousness where you can have the experience. The only purpose of the Infinite Way or of Advaita Vedanta or of any of the teachings that I've been exposed to that are, in my estimation, real teachings, is to bring you to the point where you have the experience. Everything else is a lie. Everything else is nonsense. So, that's it. Thank you.